Hey, welcome, loves. I am so excited to have you on for another episode of About Her. And today I have the wonderful Nita with me. Nita, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to dive deep into holistic copywriting with you today, into yoga and everything that kind of comes to our mind. So before we start, I would love for you to share a bit about your energy and your journey to the listeners so that they can kind of get a feeling for you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me. I'm super, super excited just to share space with you and to meet your community and your listeners. So thank you. And so, yeah, I'm Nita. My name is Mariana, but everyone calls me Nita. And I am a holistic copywriter and a yoga teacher and the founder of Nita's Coloring Book. That's where I help holistic healers, mind-body healers, practitioners, and business owners really tap into their authentic selves and pour that into their marketing in a way that feels heart-centered and aligned so they can expand their impact and continue to help as many people as possible. My journey is a bit all over the place. I went to school for communications and I'm a former video production producer. And I say former, even though I feel like you're kind of a producer for life when you do that job because it changes your brain. But I did that for a long time, for about 10 plus years, until, like many people in that industry, I burned out. And I found myself recently moving here to Canada, to Calgary, and going through the worst winter of my life, minus 40 something Celsius. Yeah, it was really hard. And I'm a Venezuelan, so it was particularly hard for me. And that was like the first moment where I just realized I was so miserable in my job. Even though I used to love storytelling and video so much and love my team, I woke up in tears every day. I dreaded going to like a meeting. It just turned into a nightmare. I had to take a step back and really listen to myself. And I made the hardest decision to quit that job and really think, okay, what is it that is my purpose? If I'm not happy here and if I'm so super tired and burned down, like what is it that I'm meant to do, right? And eventually copywriting came to place. And I helped health and wellness businesses for quite a few years with health and wellness copywriting. And then the second pivot moment was when I got pregnant with my daughter. And I think you and many of the moms or parents listening, like they can relate that that's such a huge moment, right? Like you start questioning everything. And I realized that although I love my business and love copywriting, there was still something missing. There was still something that I wanted to bridge the gap between owning a business, owning a holistic business, and then really tapping into yourself to bring that into sales, into social media, into blogs, into whatever, because the more people I talk to, the more I realize that they're so busy and they're so stressed and it's tough to be present for you, right? So, even though I had some Zoom calls and some conversations, it was tough to get to that heart center point. So that's when this new approach, this holistic copywriting approach came to be as I was doing my yin yoga teacher training, and I'm a lifelong like mindfulness and meditation practitioner. I say lifelong, but like maybe the adult years, let's say. That's when I started combining all of that. And I combined movement, meditation, mindfulness into copywriting, into making this more of an embodied approach so that what you're putting out there is really aligned and authentic to you. So that was a long-winded story, but that's kind of how everything came to be.
Thank you so much. And I totally get it because it's like really deep layered, and this is nothing that you can put into one sentence. So thank you for sharing all of that. And I told you when we met first time that I think it's such a deeply important job, especially right now when so many people are like waking up to their power and, kind of questioning during COVID, like, what am I really doing for a job? Is this really something that is necessary, relevant, important to me? And therefore, I've seen so many women move into something that should be their soul's calling. But then again, like you said, there is so much hustle, so much stress. We kind of take on this like masculine approach of business that is just present all over the world. And we kind of copy paste that onto our female souls businesses, and then we feel burned out as well, we feel drained as well. And this is like, for me, that was a really sad point where I thought like, this should be fun. This is like, this is just my expression of self, my deepest desire to be myself and share that and share the wisdom from that perspective. And then it's draining. How could it? And so I think it's so beautiful that as always, through challenge, you found the way to like really align with your soul's calling. And I totally agree. Motherhood or parentship is like really a pivotal moment where we kind of need to. I think it's by design question everything. And how beautiful is that? Well, how stressful and how overwhelming, of course, as well. But like we talked about that before off record, like this, it's just sometimes it's a lot, but it's also that amazing opportunity to birth something that hasn't been there before. And most people I meet who are in the online space have like a really hard time articulating their work, especially when it comes to more of the intangible things. So I imagine there's a lot to do for you, a lot of copywriting to do so that people can, so many people are so gifted. I wonder if you have that too. When a new client approaches you, is like that you think like, oh my God, what an amazing thing they're doing. But then there's this like, how can you get that across, especially in the online space, so that people can really feel it? Because if you're going to enter a shop, it's different. You kind of have the energy in a different, more tangible way. But now how to bring that across?
It's interesting because I do come across so many talented and like soul-centered businesses. It's incredible, like from mindfulness coaches, like yoga teachers and breath work facilitators, or just space holders in general. And they're doing amazing things with unique approaches. I'm recently working with someone who does like qigong and sound healing and combines it with comedy. I'm like, wow, how unique, like
cool.
All of these modalities with humor. And it's sometimes you're just so close to your journey and to your narrative that it's difficult to take that kind of step back and have that bird's eye view and to know exactly what is it about your story that people need to hear, that people can relate to, and that can establish that connection to say, okay, I'm going to buy from you, or I'm going to, join your course, or whatever the service is. And I mean, it happened to me. I had to work with a business coach and a copywriting business coach actually to like redo my website and kind of have this holistic approach come to life. Like I also needed help. I don't have all the answers. I just feel like sometimes we're just so in it. And especially like you said, we're hustling and we're doing all the things. And if we're parents, even more so, that we just kind of like, and again, no judgment, because this is a judgment-free space, but we just put together a website as quickly as we can and just like put it out there and like pray for people to come. And I get that because I've done it. I get it. Like I truly get it. Right? I know. And then you rewrite it and write it again. And you're like, oh no, I hate this now. And then you put another thing. And it's like, it becomes this like snowball of just things that you're just kind of maybe vomiting all this word vomit out there and praying for like the spaghetti to stick at some point. And I think this just, I'm inviting people to come into a space that's a bit more intentional, right? Where they actually connect like physically. And I know tapping into body is hard for a lot of people, and I get that. But if we can come to a more mindful and embodied space where we truly listen to what it is that we want to say, what it is our purpose, and who do we really want to serve, in what unique way, then we can more mindfully and intentionally communicate that. And maybe you won't have the words. Maybe you connect and you're like, I still don't know. That's fine. I can take that and help you. But as long as we get there first, like we need to get there first so we can truly communicate that authentically.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. And I feel we often are, because we've seen that in our upbringing or in all the work environments we have been before. We've seen this like, do, get as much done as short time possible, this kind of energy. We are just like taking that on for our businesses, and then the feeling isn't coming through. It's like you feel the feeling of hustle. Yes, of course you feel a feeling when you read that kind of copy written in that kind of energy, but you don't feel what the person actually wanted to bring across. And so I think this like taking time and stepping back and maybe going into meditation before you write copy or write content or do your website or like do dancing or yoga or walk in nature or whatever it is. But like doing this, speaking for myself and also a lot of my clients, although I'm not doing business coaching, but kind of it's always intertwined, is it's scary to take that time. So like if you only as a mom, like so often it's only nap time you have to do something on your business. And if you take out of that time, you take time to meditate, then it feels like, oh, so scary because there is no time to actually do things. And I think that's what I want to double down on, is that it takes a bit of courage and someone who guides you to do that, and not just like write as fast as possible, as much as you can, to like kind of pump the content out because you just have a few moments for yourself. And so I think I love that you shared that. Thank you so much for sharing that you yourself hired a business coach to help you with your website, even though that's exactly what you do, because I feel that's something that we so often don't allow ourselves. So like if you're like, I'm a healer, I always want to do my own healings because like I'm super curious to see how far I've come. And I think like, I can do it for others. Why can't I do it for me? And then of course there's like the blind spot. Yeah, and I know that, but still I feel it's often, if you can do that for others, it's often there is so much resistance on asking for exactly that help for yourself, because it can bring up imposter syndrome or insecurities. But also it's like this energy of like, but I can do that for myself, I can do that. That's my area of expertise. So I think it's really amazing that you did hire someone, and because that, that gives people the inspiration, or maybe this like nudge to say like, oh, I can do that for me too. And that doesn't mean that I'm a failure. It's actually meaning that I want to get there quicker. I want to help more people quicker. So it's actually like a very good thing. But somehow this is like, but well, you can do that for yourself. Why don't you do it? Does it mean you can't? No. So I just want to like say that there's a very big mindset shift here on how we can get help.
That is so key. It took me a long time. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be honest. I was looking for coaches for a while, and I would look at the price point. And I bet that happens when people look at my services too, right? It's like, but I don't know, but I feel like I can do that myself. Like, I don't know, especially like if you're a fellow healer, practitioner, like you just feel like you said, like I can do this for myself. Like I may not need the support, but it was such a pivotal point for me because she gave me not only the accountability, that is huge,
yes,
but also just the perspective of someone that's outside. And she was trying to understand like the whole holistic approach. She's like, wait, but this is going to be kind of abstract. Like we're going to have to find a way to explain this to people. And she really challenged me. And I think that's so important. Like the fact that you can do something doesn't mean necessarily you have to. And I think that's another invitation to like give yourself permission to ask for help. And to, although we're all about doing, the whole point of this holistic approach is also a focus on the human behind the brand. And I feel like us as healers and space holders, like we have to take care of ourselves, and we have to, like, if we're hustling through everything and through marketing and through everything and through life, like how are we going to have space to hold that for people, like to provide people what they need? So, and I had to do that myself. I was like, okay, like I can't fully support people with their copy and with their embodied like approach if I don't do that for myself. So like taking that time, like you said, even if it's a 5-minute meditation, even if you don't hire someone like me, that's fine. But what is it that you need to maybe take that step towards the goal? That's not necessarily through doing more, but it's more about being and sitting with what is right now and identifying those areas where you might be able to use a hand, where you might be able to delegate, right? So definitely.
So I feel like as an kind of an outsider with an outside view, you have such a laser focus on other people's lives, and you kind of instantly get what they need to change, where they're kind of stuck. And in that scenario for yourself, it's often so hard because of our limiting beliefs that I think only, quote unquote, the holding space that you get when you hire someone, even though you can do that work, that's for me, that and the accountability were the most powerful, potent shifts that I had when I moved into coaching myself, like really, one-on-one private intense coaching, where it's like, okay, it's not so much about the knowledge. It's not that I cannot, or I would not have found that insight for myself at some point. It's more like the intensity and this like having a safe space to share with another, having this accountability, having this sacred space that someone holds for you so that you can unfold in exactly that moment and not shy away or not postpone or not, reschedule and do something that is maybe more comfortable in that moment than writing that stuff. It's like you cannot get out of that if you have someone. So I totally agree. Like, we don't have to get help, but if we do, there lies a lot of power in it. And often collectively, I feel it's like described as us giving power away when we get help. I feel it's exactly the opposite, as in so many things. It's exactly the opposite of what it looks like, but it's so necessary for our growth if we really committed to get someone in our boat at one point.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of the same shift as the doing and the being. For me, I used to think like, well, the more I do, the quicker I'm going to get to the place I want to get to. And I'm a doer. Like, I am a perfectionist and I am like a planner. And as a producer, like, I like scheduling things and listing things and like Asana management tool, whatever. Like, I love that. And I think something resonated with me when you said that at one point your business kind of became again something like a source of burnout. And after quitting production and before this holistic approach, I was getting there again too. I was like, what is happening? This was supposed to be cool and freeing and I'm getting into this, but I got into the doing again. Yeah. I got into the doing and filling the hours and saying yes to all the projects and then again had to take a step back, and maybe it was the yoga, maybe it was the universe, maybe it was motherhood, all the things. And I realized that the more time I took to be, like to actually sit and whatever that means to you, right? Like you mentioned dancing, meditating, like even it's just taking a few breaths. Like before this recording, I got nervous and I was like, okay, sat down, took like 5 breaths. And I was like, I'm here, I'm grounded again. Yeah. What is it that you need to be here? You don't need to do anything, but like, what is it that your body is asking? And I think the same goes for like marketing. Is like, we're so laser focused on doing. You said it, like laser focused on, okay, check, creating the content, putting it out there. But like, are we also taking care of like ourselves, and are we also like taking time to be, so that whatever that we're putting out there makes sense and it's aligned? And maybe that's one of the reasons why it's not connecting, right? Yeah, that could be.
Yes, I totally agree on that. And it's interesting that you share it, because I had that a few days ago where my son is sick a lot at the moment. So I'm a lot like needing to reschedule or needing to like postpone my work into late hours, or not even doing it at all when I can kind of delay it. And then I was laying on the sofa, totally exhausted, totally not inspired to do anything, although I love my work. And after half an hour of, being there, breathing, meditating, and just like, doing nothing essentially, I felt so inspired. And the post I then created was getting much more like views and likes and, all the things we love. And the energy felt totally different. And it was again a reminder, because I feel like I need to be constantly reminded of this as I'm a doer, as you are as well. It's actually so much more powerful to take that rest and like care for yourself and then put out that work, because the energy is so different and the words you find are so different, and the visuals or whatever, but like the whole energy transmission is a different one when you feel rested, when you feel nourished. And having that approach, I'm always like zooming out and imagining how would the world be when we would have that as it would be laid back. It would be be common sense in every business, in every company, to have that kind of an approach, saying like, okay, let's rest, let's chat, let's lay on the couch for half an hour before we have something important coming in. How different not only would people feel, but how different would work be? And I would love us to get there at some point collectively, but I think us doing this work individually, it's good for us. It's very good for like the clients that can find us through this kind of energy attraction, but it's also helping collectively getting the awareness that that's another approach we can take, and we don't have to burn out one after another just to what? To get something done.
And it's interesting because it's like we're so, I mean, since we know society, but even us, like we get ourselves into this point of autopilot or of, thinking that, I mean, if we don't do, then we're guilty. If we rest, then we feel bad. If we don't do, we're not enough. And I've had to, it's kind of like rewiring your brain in a bit, in a way, because those are sort of limiting beliefs that personally I've grown up with. Like as a high achiever, like if I'm not like always striving, I feel like I'm not worthy. And that has been such a mindset shift even within this business, and something I'm working on. I wouldn't say that I'm there. Awesome. It's still a challenge, but I feel like a lot of us have that in the back of our minds, that if we're not doing something, if we're resting, if we're taking a day off, if we're, I don't know, closed for a Friday, whatever it is, like, but the other one is doing it. So then am I not good enough? Am I not the best at what I do? Am I not serving as many people as I can? And it's like taking the opposite approach and just listening to what you need. And that's where like listening to the body, listening to the physical body, the mind, the emotional body, your whole self. That's why it's like holistic, right? Like your whole self. How are you? And what do you need? And yeah, I that doesn't mean that there are seasons of life where we're doing and we're like hustling. And I'm not opposed to that. I think it's just that we're stuck on the yang energy. We're stuck on the masculine all the time.
Agreed.
And we have a hard time slowing down because I think it is challenging to sit with what is. It is challenging to let those emotions, those thoughts just come up. That's also why I love yin yoga so much, because it's like, it's a practice where you have to do that for an hour, whatever the time you have, just sit there, right? And you're like, oh God, please take me out of here. But it's like, we're not used to doing that. We're always used to. The other day, and this is a tangent, but I just remember this. I was like, I don't remember the last time I sat without doing anything for 5 minutes. Because remove meditating, sure. Okay, I sit to meditate, sure. But like doing nothing, doing nothing, sitting to look out a window or like just, I had a hard time thinking when was the last time I did that. And I was like, isn't that insane? Isn't that crazy? That we're always filling our time and our schedule with things to do and things to accomplish. So it is a big shift. It is, I think it's like you said, if everyone practice this a little bit more, we would be a huge different like society. But I think it starts with us, like you're saying. I think it starts with each one of us having that kindness to self, like that courage, because I think it does take a lot of courage to sit with what is and to let that come up and then gently let it go, or notice it and gently let it fade away. Like it just, but how wonderful would life be? Like really, if we're all just, we're a little bit more like that, right?
And I feel like that's just, I don't want to say it's a birthright because it sounds so like fighty, but I feel it like really part of who we are is that being, that sitting in nature, that letting our view go wide instead of just looking at the screen right in front of your eyes. And we need to have that balance, like the yin and yang, as you touched upon it. It's so important, and it's collectively not laid out that way in the society we live in right now. And I feel like what you just shared about this, like how scary it can be to go sit in silence, to let your body lead, because maybe the body then kind of tells you how long you've neglected it. So there can things come up that might feel very uncomfortable and you definitely want to run away from, especially if you're not used to that or this unworthiness. So when you just shared that, I thought like, oh my God, I now remember, still do that sometimes, but it's gotten like much better. A few years ago, I was like jumping off my chair when my husband entered our home. Not because I'm scared of him, not because he would have said something, but because I was like, and maybe I've sat there for a minute. I need to like do something to like honor that he was away the whole day providing for us. And, like I felt bad for just sitting there taking a few seconds when our kid was, relaxed and playing alone. And my nervous system was so tense that it says like, okay, you need to do something so that he doesn't think you're lazy. And now I'm thinking like, oh my God, what a pressure. But I wasn't even realizing this at that moment. And actually, I know a lot of people who have that, whose body reacts in kind of this, like, I had this card pulled up before we meet. And I think it's like the squirrel energy of being like really fast, really all over the place. And that might be nice for a short time. So me too, I'm not opposed doing, but I feel we need to have the balance and the awareness of when it's good to do and when it's definitely needed to rest and to like allow ourselves to rest, to let come up whatever comes up, and to being able to feel that because we can and let these insecurities come because we know that we can hold them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. Yeah. So to like have that kind of an awareness, that is healing a lot of old wounds, a lot of programming from society that isn't actually ours. But it feels scary when you're starting.
What you just shared, it's just, I've had that too. And I think as moms, and particularly, I mean, I don't want to take anything away from all parents, but like, I think as moms and as women, we're just like also wired in this way of like, we have to also do for our kids. We cannot be resting, because if we're resting, we're not showing up. If we're resting, we're not. Yeah. And it's so interesting that your example is so clear. Like, he's going to show up and I'm not going to be doing anything. That means that I'm not, it's like, it's so quickly. You don't notice that the body's just jumping and doing. And I've had that too. And I think it's been an interesting journey, because with having my kid, I've had to go back to those old wounds and unworthiness and guilt, and just, I'm constantly working on it, because it's almost like I started reverting back to doing again, not only from a business perspective, but also from a mom, from a family perspective. Because I'm the one with the business. My husband has a full-time job. Thanks to him, I've been able to take this crazy journey. And it is sort of ingrained in a sense of like, oh, like I feel guilty if I'm not producing, showing up, doing all the things for my kid and for my business, so that, all the sacrifices and all the things he's done for us, like, worth it, right? So it's like we create these narratives and these stories. And sure, some of it is true. Like, I am very grateful for what he's done. But I'm also, it's kind of like working on having grace, right? Constantly towards self, constantly like, and towards that inner child, and towards like all those wounds that are still there. And for some of us, it could be trauma. And it's kind of interesting how all of that mixes and blends with business and with motherhood. And it's kind of a big ball of, I was going to say shit, but I don't know if I can curse in this. So thanks.
Totally fine.
You know what? So it's just, wow, what a wild journey it is to be not only in the healing space, but like you're also constantly healing as a parent and as a healer yourself and as a business owner. It's like, it never stops. It never ends.
Agreed. And it's so intertwined, like you said. And I think we often don't realize, we think like, okay, that's the business me that is doing X, Y, and Z stuff. And then there's like the private me. But like you said, I think it's really, you phrased it very beautifully. This like motherhood journey can bring us back into the doing. Even if we had before like kind of thought we released that concept of needing to always prove our worth through the actions we take. But definitely for me, like motherhood brought me back into being really very much in the masculine, in the doing and the kind of organizing and being structured and kind of trying to handle everything. And it's interesting because at the same time, it's like the most feminine thing you could ever do. So it's kind of hilarious, actually, that it came that way. And to mix that with starting a business or earning a business at whatever stage can definitely like extend this feeling of this like kilometer long to-do list that's always there. But there's this feeling of nervousness of needing to like get things done instead of like relaxing. And like you said, feeling guilt-free, even though we have loving family and partners who provide for us, who support us. But still, if you are not nourishing yourself, you can only show up for them and for your children for so long, and for your business and for your clients, So this like depleting ourselves that might work short term, but on the long run, nobody benefits. So I wonder how that concept gotten so big that we're all depleting ourselves and thinking like we're doing the most selfless thing by that, when it's actually such a bad idea.
I don't know how we got here. And I think, honestly, it's like, oh man. But also, it's interesting because at one point, even the self-care practices, at one point, I'm trying to revert that, but felt like another to-do list item. Like even the things that were nourishing me and and I had to talk this through with my therapist, which again, another big thing that I'm always up for is just like, go to therapy. That's another, like, ask for help from coaches. Yes, business coaches, all that. But like the space you get at, whatever kind of therapy that you like is just so precious and transformational. But anyways, I had to talk through like all of that in therapy, because it was like, yeah, I do yoga and I'm a yoga teacher and I do functional fitness and CrossFit and I eat well and I meditate. It's like, but it almost started to feel like check.
Mm-hmm.
And again, where's the intention? Like, is the intention just to do it, or is the intention to listen and nourish? And there's a component of discipline there. Of course, I think there has to be. Otherwise, we might get, all of these obstacles that can come up to the practice, like, laziness, or, we make excuses. We do all these things, as humans. But I think as much as we can, if we can keep that intention and that why, that the purpose of it alive, then the easier it can become to keep that discipline and to keep showing up. Because then we kind of go back into the yang and just like, yeah, I'm slowing down and I'm doing this, but it's just kind of like part of my to-do list. It's part of like my checking my list thing. And it's, again, because we also are used to just checking off things, just doing things out of this necessity to complete, but what if we just flow with the energy a little bit more, right? And we give ourselves the grace of like being more seasonal in our lives, giving ourselves what we need right now might not be the same as tomorrow. It's just kind of having that more feminine approach, or balancing the yin and the yang. Again, like it kind of goes back to that.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think it's so interesting that you mentioned these self-care practices that kind of feel like something that we need to do. I had that too. And I know a lot of friends and clients of mine who are mothers as well who have that. Most of them are mothers. It's actually, it's kind of an interesting thing that comes up there, where we can't enjoy often so much the thing itself that we enjoyed before, because there's always this like pressure of time. And then we kind of check it off. We do it, but not for the sake of like feeling good, but for the sake of checking off, which is so interesting, isn't it? Because something that you like doing then kind of is like, oh my God, I have to do that again. And you lose the overall why of that practice to an extent that most people stop doing them. Like you said, discipline goes away and we're not going to sports, or we're not even like doing our hair or whatever we like to do. I don't know. It doesn't even matter what it is, but it's like this, like things that we've enjoyed before are just another thing to do. And I think that speaks for the overwhelm that often is there, of this like, oh, I cannot handle this as well. I don't want to think about this as well, whatever it is. It's just one thing that it's less on my to-do list. And there is no connection to the joy that it could bring you. So I know for myself, journaling in the morning felt like something like this. I did affirmation journaling after some morning pages.
Yeah.
I wrote down the same affirmation of whatever goal I had for 50 times. And then I started, no, I've no discipline, no joy anymore, even though connecting to the feeling of already having whatever I wished for felt initially good, but then thinking about doing that as well, it's like, no, okay, just skip that. And that's how we often lose ourselves, I think. Not in motherhood or not in the job, but like in this combination of everything that comes, we kind of lose ourselves, and then we are flowing, but not in a way that it feels like good from the heart, but it's more like, okay, I'm trying to
Scattered.
and do it in any way. Yeah, scattered. And it's so sad because none of these things that we said yes to initially are leading us on our own. It's more like the combination of everything that is just a lot.
I think it has to do with the overwhelm, right? Because when our nervous system is at that point, I just remember like when I was in deep burnout and so depressed before quitting my job, I think a journaling session wouldn't have done anything just by itself. I think at that point, I just really needed to take care of like the nervous system as a whole, like whatever. And that's when I eventually started therapy. And that's when eventually I started kind of going to work out, not just to work out for the sake of that, but just trying to find myself and coming back home. So if there are practices when we're at that point that is so overwhelming and it's like, I don't want to add anything else to the list, not even a workout, that just like, it just feels too much. Like, what is it that allows you to come home? What is it that allows you to kind of bring your nervous system back to a balanced state? And that could be different for everyone. Is it like breath work? Is it just laying down on the ground, finding some grounding? Like, what is it that helps you? And then you can layer things on top of that. But sometimes we're very ambitious. Sometimes we're like, I want to do this, I don't know, 30-minute a day meditation challenge, and I'm going to start tomorrow. And that's all great. I don't think that's a bad idea. I just, sometimes we think really big. And then by the second day, we're like, oh God, I don't think I can do this. Versus like maybe starting small, or maybe starting with the thing that can really nourish you in that moment. And once you're back to like a more balanced state, then we can kind of play with, more self-care practices. And I just think that the whole concept of self-care is to me personally, like adhering to like just one thing in the same way every day is very challenging. And I know that, again, discipline has a lot to do with that. But I think if we can find a way to flow in an aligned way, like you said, not flow in a scattered squirrel energy way where we're just like all over the place. But if we devote whatever time we consider it's good to a practice that maybe changes a bit from day to day, month to month, or whatever, but it's at least some time that you devote to you. And we're a little bit more flexible in that way, maybe it helps with the discipline aspect. So it's kind of like finding your own guardrails in a way. Someone I know, she's a systemic coach and a constellation facilitator. She shared a practice that I don't know, I think it's great. I want to share with people if that helps. It's called a coffee mat, and shout out to Amelia if she's listening. So she just says in the morning, she just places her mat on the floor, brings her coffee, and then allows herself to do whatever it is that her body and her whole self needs. Sometimes it's a few yoga poses. Sometimes it's just drinking coffee mindfully. Sometimes it's journaling, whatever it is. But it's just sacred time for that. So what if we find more practices like that are a little bit more flexible and that allows us more space to keep showing up, right?
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. It feels so aligned to the way we as women are working, because we're not always the same. We're not the linear sun male energy. We're like the, flowy, wavy moon energy. And one day you might do half an hour of yoga, but then again, the next day you just want to sit there with your coffee and like stare at the birds or whatever.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
So I love this idea of just dedicating time, and then whatever you do with that time, it's a second thing, and it's like the less important thing. But the first is like to have that time, to create that time. And then you could read, you could dance, you could do yoga, you could journal, you could whatever. to yourself, it doesn't matter. And I think it's giving ourselves a bit more of a freedom to not have that another to-do list thing that we want to check off, but really go more into the enjoying and embodying a feeling that we like to call in, instead of just saying, oh yeah, I did that today. Because yeah, I did that today, but like, if you didn't connect to it, what did it give you actually, or did it take? So for me, it's always like, I love always coming back to, am I a giver here, or am I a taker? And to see, like, you know, when in relationships, or when creating content, do I want to take something? Do I want to take views? Do I want to take likes, whatever? A new client, is that my intention? Yes, of course, at some point it is. But am I coming with a given energy, or am I coming with a taking energy? And I think for the self-care, it's the same thing, but a little bit reversed. It's like, can I give the space to myself? And it's not about taking, about checking. It's more about like dedicating this generosity to yourself that you normally give out to your family, to your work, to your whatever you just do during the day, but dedicating that to you and giving that back to you. That's the most important thing. In whatever way, like you said, we do it. We're so different, all of us, and even in different life phases, it can shift, and that's fine.
Yeah. It's allowing more grace. I think we're really hard on ourselves. We really are, and it's hard in life, hard in business. And I get it that we might go through hard times and challenges. Like, life is lifing all the time. But even if we just start practicing a little bit more compassion and a little bit more kindness in that way, and it's sometimes we don't even notice it because we are so used to the grind. We're so used to the hard things are the things that matter, right? Like, it took me it took me a lot to get here, and now this is worth it, kind of a thing. I used to think this. And we complicate things. I struggle with this. I make things complicated all the time. And then I look at it and I'm like, why am I writing the same thing in 4 different lists? I can just have one list. I'm that way. I get it. Like, we are also kind of wired to strive for the hardworking things. And sometimes if we took a step back and did things a little bit more simpler, like a little bit, not everything has to be hard-earned and complicated. And I think that's another maybe belief or story we tell ourselves, is that the simple things are not worth it.
Yeah.
And sometimes the simplest, I don't know, breath can be just like, like, that's the anchor I needed. Or the simplest, I don't know, sometimes when you're creating content, like maybe you just posted a story on your Instagram that took you 5 seconds of you doing something authentic and showing your true self. And that got more engagement than your 5-hour reel editing thing. It happens, right? It's like, you're like, oh my God, I can't crack the code. But sometimes, like, humans like and understand other humans. So if we, the more authentic and the more, I don't know, the less complicated we get, I think sometimes that also pays well. Like, I don't know. It's just, and I see it with how people react to things, how people tell me if they like something or not. And sometimes I like spend all this time planning and doing something. And then I'm like, oh, maybe if I just go simpler, that's better. That would make me feel better. And then I see the reaction in other people and I'm like, oh, okay. But it's tough to do it.
Yes, I feel because it's like kind of loosening the grip on control the moment we can kind of like put everything into lists or Excel spreadsheets or whatever. We feel like we're in control of stuff, but then again, we're just doing for the sake of doing and not really being productive. And you said it, like, you could do something that takes literally 5 seconds, and it hits harder than something you worked on for hours. And it's like, it's a kind of like, you think like, does the universe make a joke with me like right now? What is it?
Yeah.
But again, it's the alignment, and it's this like trusting that the things we put out will be heard and seen by the people who need at that moment. And the more we have that needy energy, that's the least attractive thing you could do for any kind of relationship. But it's like this, I feel it's this like, I need to stay disciplined in this content creation or in this like how I show up, because that's what professional is. And we have been very much sold, I agree, to this like the more complicated and hardworking things are, the more valuable they are. And simplicity just sells not so well at the moment. I think we're shifting really hard on that paradigm right now. But simplicity definitely hasn't sold well in the last decades because it's like, oh, that's too easy. Everyone could do that. That's not working. Where it's exactly, again, the opposite, because this is what people actually crave in our like really full lives. Is someone who said like, it can be so simple. So just scratch all 4 of your to-do lists and we do that one thing today. And after that, you can feel complete. And it's like, what? Really? There's this practice by Abraham Hicks. I don't know if you know that. I love it very deeply because I'm a Virgo too. So I do a lot of lists and a lot of, stuff. And then I think like, oh, that took me a long time. Will I ever actually look at it? No. And Hicks shared that when we have these long to-do lists, it's the most easy way to come back to the well-being is actually asking ourselves, what of all these 100 points is what only I can do? What are the ones that only I can do? And then you write these on one half of the list, and the rest you write, normally I'm doing the like simple version and just write over it, that's the universe's job. And that gives me so much of a freedom, because I think like most of the stuff we think only we can do is not actually only ours to do. But it's like maybe getting that payment done or creating that content. Someone else can do that. Someone else can or the universe can do that for us. But what can only we do? That's actually not that much. And if we just do these things that are just only ours to do and let the rest be for the universe, it lifts a lot of weight from your shoulders. And actually I feel it's like kind of setting the boundary straight between what's my job and what's the universe's job. That feels really good.
Oh, and that lifts so much weight. And I think it also goes to even copy. I see so many websites and content out there, especially in the healing space, that gets really complicated because we get really excited about our stuff, right? And we get like, we want to share everything. We want to tell you all the things. And I want to tell you my story from when I was born till now and everything that happened. And that's part of the work I do with people too, is like, okay, I get it. This is a lot and everything's great, but simplicity. If we want our people to understand our messaging, and we really need to nail like these key points, these pain points, the struggles, the desires, and then the transformation you're offering, like really what are the outcomes? Really neatly, in a way that it like, I have no doubt, and I know that you are the unique provider for me, or a business owner or service provider for me versus others. And the fluff is great. Like whenever I love helping people tell their stories, like writing their bios or their about page. And there's a lot of their personal stories that belongs there, but there's a lot of it that doesn't. Like, I don't need to see a resume. I don't need to see like all the details of your upbringing, because then we lose people. We lose people because people are scrolling and doing and going so fast. Again, we're talking the yang, like everyone's just like, boom, 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 boom. Okay. How can you give me what I need right now in this? And if you lose them in the first paragraph or first few sentences, because you're just like babbling over, I don't know, like this huge, like, especially abstract concepts that are really complicated, or things in the energy world that can be really, really abstract, then people are like, I don't see, no, next. Like they're just going to skip and go past it. So I think the concept of simplicity also applies to messaging. And that doesn't mean that you need to dumb it down and you hear that a lot, like not necessarily, but make it so that people can truly and easily digest what you're saying, and also easily understand the transformation you're offering. I think we get really in the weeds with features and like big words, and we need to go back to clarity and to relatability, getting really specific about, and this is another thing I work with people, is like, oh, I want to help everyone. Sure, that sounds great, but you are not going to sell to everyone, unfortunately. So the clearer you get about who you're serving and their specifics, then the easier you're going to talk to that person, to their specific pain points and specific problems and specific desires with specific examples. And you can grab examples like, I don't know, what they say to each other in a coffee shop or the things they buy or don't buy. Like it has to get to that level of specificity. And it all comes down to being a bit more clear and more simple with that approach. But it's very challenging when you just want to fit all of it in there, right? I just feel like I just have to say it all.
Yeah, because I think like especially in the healing space, there's this like shared desire of helping everyone, because we found our tools so powerful that we kind of want to share with everyone because everyone would benefit, and maybe everyone would, but it's definitely not everyone wants. So this like I had to have a podcast with a beautiful girl. She's in business coaching too, and she said like she can't understand why people hide their CTAs or their office, like at the latest line of their caption where she said like, put it at the first view, please do not hide your offer, your transformation. And it's the same thing that I'm just hearing from you now, is this like, and maybe that's often that feels like kind of scary because it's like, oh, I need to like, pack it well, or can I just be so bold, so blunt, so not humble to say like, okay, that's what I do and it's great, please buy it, maybe you could phrase it a bit more nice, but essentially the message can be, I think, as simple as that. But I'm telling that to myself as well because I love kind of going on a tangent, and then I think like, oh, okay, is this actually making sense for anyone else than me? And I feel we often don't allow ourselves to be so punctual to just say like, okay, that's great, please go there and do that, because it's definitely helping you transform your life, which is true. But this like having this boldness to say it, we kind of, I think that's something people shy away from, and therefore it gets so complicated.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we don't know it, which is very interesting. Sometimes we think we know, but when we have to sit down and get very clear, it's like it all so fluffy sometimes and so abstract that if I ask you, okay, but like how are you really transforming? Give me like 3-4 ways. I don't know. It gets tough to write it sometimes when you're not clear on them yourself, and that's huge. And I know that that's scary to admit. Personally, I had to go through that work before even writing my new website as a copywriter, which is like, oh, but you should know, you're the one that does it. It's like, well, it's hard because you have to sit down and really dive deep into your ideal client and what they're looking for, and then what you're offering, how you can help them, and make it super clear. But it has to be clear to you first. And for it to be clear for you, you have to know this ideal client so well, right? Like there has to be work done before. And I think that's part of the gap I was talking to at the beginning, is like sometimes we just, again, because of the rush and the hustle, we're like, okay, I help women between 30 and 35 and that's it. That's my ideal client. Next. Okay. So women are always tired and I don't know. They're always like, they want to be healthier. Okay, cool. That's their desire. So, and then we like check again, check. And then when we get to the transformation, it's like, well, I don't know. I help them get healthier. Cool. How?
Yeah.
You know what? And then you have to like dig deeper, and sure, you can put that on a website, but again, is it going to connect? Is it going to relate? Right. And it's sometimes I even go through websites and it's not even clear who or how or, and sometimes it's not because they don't want to say it, sometimes because they don't know. And so I think that's why it's like, I don't feel like what I offer is like business coaching. I would never call myself a business coach because, oh my God, that's so hard. That's such a hard job. But I have noticed that for me to do this copywriting thing right, and for messaging to relate and to connect, this work has to be done one way or another. And I can walk alongside you for some of this, but a lot of it also comes from you. I hope you get it out, but it is here.
It's inside.
It is there. Sometimes we just have to dig a little deeper. That's that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's a mistake that, or maybe not mistake, but it's something that a lot of us do. This like trying to get over with the ideal client thing, to start helping people, to start, doing the work. And it's again not being clear on what it is that we actually want to do or how we do it. And sometimes in the healing space, it's not that easy to put a finger on it because it's not a step A, B, C process that you could have in. I'm coming from fashion, so there was really clear what to do first step and then second and then third to sew a dress. There's not much interpretation left in there, but in the healing, it can be like really up and down, and there's no linear growth. So that makes it harder, but still it can be done. And I think the moment we again go into that quietness, we had that before, and sit with the uncomfortable feelings of finding stuff out about ourselves or the people we want to help with, things get easier afterwards. There's a reward in it, but it's often missed because it's uncomfortable or we don't know the answers yet. And that in itself is kind of hard to admit. So thank you so much for that wisdom and the amazing insights and the energy. It was just such a beautiful, nourishing, fun conversation that I thank you dearly for that.
Thank you. Thank you for the space. And thank you for doing this to hold space for other women and people in general, to uplift others. I think we need to hear more about how we're all navigating life and business and finding power within ourselves so that we can empower others. So thank you. Thank you for having me.